Starting live video. Creepy voice from behind the camera.
What's up, everybody? It's Justin. Welcome. Mute my computer first. Welcome to the weekly live Ask Me Anything AMA number 30. Whoa. That's a lot, right? That's a long time. All right, first things first, I gotta refresh my screen, make sure I can see myself, make sure that means all of you can see me on your screens. It says live. Let's scroll down, see what it looks like. Got it. Boom. Awesome. Ooh, this one looks pretty good. All right, I'm getting this set up pretty decent, I think. I think it's working pretty well here. We got the board, you can see the board pretty well. I can pretty much stay to this side over here and be all good. By the way, if you guys don't listen to the podcast, all this is gone. It's just really, really quick and to the point. I kind of get rid of some of the fluff, the Facebook fluff, the comments, the me giving intros and being silly and being Justin, which is ridiculous. So what's up, everybody? For those of you that don't know, this is a weekly AMA. AMA stands for Ask Me Anything. If you are not in the Clovis groups, you should be. We have the Clovis Academy with over 1,100 members. I take questions from there. We had a great conversation this morning about what this AMA was going to be on, and that's how we settled on the topic. So I get most of my questions from there. The I Am Clovis private Facebook group, we got over 110 members in there. It's fantastic. We have Clovis kids with 60 plus families, also a fantastic group. If you're not in the Facebook groups, get on there. Start with facebook.com/groups/Clovis Academy. Start there. You can find everything you need. Go to clovis.store. You can find everything you need there. Tons of engagement. Lots of questions. We ran some contests. I'm going to be giving away $200 tonight. $200 to one lucky winner. Awesome. And also, so this is going to be fun for some of you who are interested in this. Wait, we got the cursor issue again. There it is. I am currently 76 hours fasted. That's right. I have not eaten a scrap of food in 76 hours. All I have had is water, black coffee, and green tea. No sweeteners, no sugars, no stevia, no nothing. I have had water, a little bit of Redmond pink salt, and I have had black coffee and green tea. That's it. So basically what happened, hey Dana, first live AMA. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for appreciating my info. I appreciate you. So what I want to talk about with this fasting thing is I realized this is very important to me. I need to get this out of the way. This AMA might go a while, but I need to get this out of the way. I don't ask any of you to do anything that I have not done myself. That is just something that I live by. I am that way. Doctors can't say it, most nutritionists can't say it, most personal trainers can't say it because they haven't run the gambit of fitness, nutrition, everything the way that I have. The amount of biohacking I've done is ridiculous, right? I don't ask you guys to do anything that I haven't done. So I realized that once we started doing all this fasting talk, one, I didn't expect you guys to jump all over fasting as hardcore as you did. We have some badass fasters in I Am Clovis and Clovis Academy. It's fantastic, right? I didn't anticipate that. So I realized, I am now helping people do something that I haven't done myself, which is a prolonged extended fast. So I was like, okay, I need to know, one, how this feels, two, how this interferes with day-to-day life. What is the compliance rate for this? I needed to know both of these things for myself. So on Sunday, we went to Rodizio Grill, which is a Brazilian steakhouse, and I ate all of the food. I'm talking pounds and pounds and pounds of meat. Everything from chicken hearts to lamb, to steak, to fish, to chicken meat, everything in between, right? It was insanity. I just went crazy and clicked the start fast button after that meal at 4 p.m. on Sunday. Here we are. I'm feeling great. I have worked out every single day. I have trained hard every single day. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen that. So I've done 3 hard workouts on each morning of those 3 days. I have done jujitsu on Monday evening. So just hard ass workouts, and I still feel great. I have almost no hunger, which has been fantastic. When I have had slight bits of hunger, I just have green tea, which is a natural appetite suppressant, which is nice. I feel great. I'm really, really surprised. And what's fantastic is I actually find that I'm far more productive because I don't have to take the time because I cook and eat all my own meals, obviously. I'm very, very careful about where I source my food from and everything. So cut out cooking time, cut out sitting down and eating time, and I've been uber productive. I can make this AMA for you, right? Crazy. So anyway, thought I'd share that with you. Might be a bad experiment because now that I know what it's like, I'm just gonna go until I decide not to. Now that I know how kind of easy it is, none of you are off the hook. Ha 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 ha. I'm just kidding. Fasting is completely optional. It is not required on Clovis. You don't have to do it, not even close. But if I'm gonna be helping some people who do wanna do it, I need to know what it feels like. And I do now, and it's great. I love it. We're just gonna keep going. I'll keep you updated, let you know how many days I'm gonna go. So, what else we got here? All right, let's talk about what we're talking about tonight. Tonight's episode is called Bad Science. Bad science, which is kind of misleading because I was coming up with this, how I wanted to approach this, what I wanted to talk about, and it's not going to be what you think it's going to be. I'm not going to pick particular studies and go through them step by step and this, that, and the other thing and be nerdy and use big giant words. I was saying that in I Am Clovis and Clovis Academy today. It's really tricky with studies for people because if you have a study that's citing the effects of fructose, or this is what happens when you replace glucose with fructose, and this is the result of, this is what happens to gluconeogenesis, and this is what happens to lipolysis, and this is what happens to the glycolytic pathway, and blah, blah, blah. That gets real confusing for people, right? So it's a little tricky, so I don't want to go through that. I just want to give you an overall rundown. What can you do to enhance your nutrition knowledge in a real way, in a step-by-step way? So that's what we're going to talk about at the end. And I'm going to walk you through a few things. We're going to talk all about science, the good, the bad, the ugly. We're going to talk about the different types of studies. We're going to talk about the limitations of nutrition science specifically, because there are massive limitations. I'll explain why. I'll give you my favorite example of bad science, how tunnel vision can often lead us to miss the mark completely, to miss really cool evidence that we wouldn't have seen, right? What to look for when doing your own research, and the people that I trust for information. I will give you specific names of the people that I trust for information, and what you can do as an individual to combat all of the confusion, okay? I think this is really, really important. So for those of you that don't know, my name is Justin Nault. I am the CEO, founder of Clovis, building a healthy life together. I invented the Perfect Paleo Powder, which is a line of nutritional supplements. Invented them here in this kitchen. My kitchen is 7 feet that away. And now I'm in the business of transforming people's lives, right? We help people lose 100 pounds, we help people lose 50 pounds, 20 pounds, 40 pounds, and everything in between. I work with professional athletes, I work with average, everyday people, unhealthy people, healthy people, and we get them all back on track. I get transformations in everybody. And I'm going to tell you how. This is just one AMA. If you want to see the other AMAs, go to clovis.store/AMA. There are 29 other AMAs. I have the podcast, which is called The Perfect Podcast with Justin Nault. I know, pretentious ass name. We just picked a name and went with it. Whatever. So let's move on and let's talk about some science. We'll talk about some bad science, some good science, and how to figure out the difference, right? And when the difference even matters. Because today, obviously, since we're Clovis, we're going to be talking specifically about nutrition science, nutrition research, okay? So types of scientific research. I don't know if I'm gonna write all this. Yeah, I guess I should. So you have review papers. So we'll just call it review. You have review papers. Now, review papers basically summarize previously published data, and the researcher or publisher of this review article, let's call it, can use those previous studies to build their own opinions and write about them. Does that make sense? So you literally take the scientific data that already exists, summarize it, build your own conclusions from it, share that conclusion with the world. This is basically what all of Clovis is. I want you to understand that. So let's call them their review papers or review articles. This is literally what all of Clovis is, right? I go out, I do the legwork, I bring you what I think is relevant, I build your protocols around what I think is relevant, that's scientific data. So review articles is actually where I like to tell people to start with things like Google Scholar and PubMed, right? If you're searching, you want to look for these review articles because someone has done the heavy lifting for you and brought you the most relevant data. Again, this is exactly what Clovis is. This is what you want to do when you're first starting with your own nutrition research. Now, another type of research you have is Ignore that. Another type of research you have is original research. And this is anything based on the researcher's own original findings, okay? It could be any kind of methodology, really, but this is based on their original findings, not a summary of previously published materials, right? They're trying to find out things for themselves. Then you have experimental studies. I'm not even gonna write all these up here. You have experimental studies, okay? Now, I want to be clear on this. Experimental studies are the only type of studies that can prove causation. I'm going to talk about causation in a minute. Causation versus correlation, okay? And randomized control studies are considered the gold standard for experimental studies. So you may have heard the term double-blind placebo-controlled study. What that means is there is a control group who is given a placebo. But double-blind means that neither the subjects nor the researcher have any idea which subjects are getting which. So there's a control group receiving the placebo, and then there is another group who's receiving the actual treatment or medicine or whatever is being tested. And neither the subjects nor the researchers have any idea who's getting what. That's the gold standard. It's a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. Okay? Now, observational studies, while those are the gold standards are the experimental studies, observational studies are actually the most common, particularly in the nutritional space. And I'm going to explain to you why they're so common. And they're demonized really for confusing correlation with causation, which is a real problem. You're going to see what that can lead to here. So let's talk about the limitations of scientific research on nutrition specifically. Specifically, it causes its own set of problems that other science doesn't really have, okay? So the only way to truly control nutrition studies would be in a metabolic ward. Now, what a metabolic ward is, it's basically a prison. You would take human beings, put them in a metabolic ward where they live and they sleep and their activity is monitored and controlled and their food intake is completely controlled by the people running the study. Now, this is literally like a prison sentence, right? So you can see why it would be quite difficult to do the long-term studies necessary for something like obesity or cancer or diabetes or Alzheimer's. These things creep up on you over decades. You need long-term studies for them. It's next to impossible to do this in a metabolic ward. Who's going to go live in a metabolic ward for 40 years, right? That would be cruel. You can't do that. So for obvious reasons, it's next to impossible to get a long-term study to do this, which means we're stuck with observational studies. Here's a great example that caused a ton of problems with the issue of correlation versus causation. So causation being the reason for something happening, the cause of this thing. Correlation being something that could loosely be associated with the cause, right? It's tricky, but that's correlation versus causation. We're going to talk about how that causes problems. So this is how things like the What the Health documentary happen, where they put these things out there and they say that they're citing science, right? Blah, 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 blah. What they're always talking about is epidemiological observational studies, okay? So if we're talking about red meat in this case, right? They make this ridiculous claim that red meat causes cancer. This is based on observational studies. Now, I'm not going to cite a specific study here. I'm not going to walk you through specific details. I'm going to explain to you how these things happen using red meat as an example, okay? This is very, very important. So let's say the hypothesis that they want to prove is red meat causes cancer or red meat increases risk of cancer. So they will do an observational study. The problem with observational studies is the subjects are literally surveyed, right? So you don't actually know if what they're saying is true. They're taking notes or taking a food journal or writing down what they ate or whatever. Any of those of you who have done a food journal with before the Carb Manager app, tried to write things down, you forget stuff, you're not exactly sure, portion sizes, blah, 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 blah. So none of that is controlled right off the bat, right? So this is an observational study. So you may say, okay, one group eats red meat a lot, right? Let's say they eat a lot of red meat multiple times per week, whatever. The other group doesn't. So they very rarely eat red meat, right? And you just take those two groups. It seems innocent enough. Heavy red meat eaters, rare red meat eaters. Not rare meat, you know what I'm saying? People who rarely eat red meat. Take those two groups, compare them. The risk of cancer over time, whatever, right? Seems harmless enough. But there's a few things to think about here, and this is where science gets tricky and people don't take things into consideration. This is where it gets very difficult, okay? We have been told as a society for decades that red meat is bad for you, red meat will kill you, the saturated fat in red meat will cause a heart attack, the red meat itself will give you cancer. We've been told all of these things, right? We've already been told all these things. Now, some of that comes from studies, quote unquote, you can say they did it in 1913, where they fed a bunch of saturated fat and meat to rabbits, and the rabbits had clogged arteries. Rabbits are not designed to eat meat, right? Some of this stuff goes back to that long ago. We had no clue about science. This is when people were using leeches to cure illnesses. You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So that's where a lot of that stuff comes from. So since the food pyramid, we've been told that, red meat has been demonized completely. So let's talk about how a study trying to prove, an observational study trying to prove that red meat causes cancer can get real tricky real quick. So if we assume that health-conscious people are following mainstream advice and avoiding large servings of red meat on a regular basis. Let's assume that right off the bat. They're following mainstream advice, right? So this means the subjects who rarely eat red meat are probably already pretty health conscious. They may be more active, less sedentary. They may be more selective and purposeful with their food choices, what they put in their mouth, right? They might eat more vegetables and less sugar. They probably don't drink soda on the regular. They probably don't smoke cigarettes or drink excess alcohol, etc., etc. Now, if you move on to the red meat eaters, the red meat eaters are obviously not following mainstream advice. So they may be less health conscious, right? Someone who's trying to be healthy will go to the mainstream first. That's what we've all done. I've done it, you've done it, everyone's done it, right? Now, are these heavy red meat eaters, when they say they're eating red meat multiple times a week, does that mean they're eating a burger and fries and a large Coke? Is that how they're consuming their red meat? Do they smoke cigarettes? Do they regularly drink beer? Do they drink soda? Do they exercise? Are they sedentary, right? Is all of the red meat that they're eating pasture-raised and grass-fed? Or is the red meat that they're eating a burger from McDonald's, right? None of these variables are controlled in these observational studies. Yet, the headline may read, let's say that the red meat eaters are at a higher risk of cancer. We didn't take into account any of those other lifestyle choices, none of them, right? Just they eat more red meat than this other group. Seems simple enough, right? But the headline may come out and say, red meat linked to 30% increased risk of cancer, or something like that. Red meat linked to risk of cancer, right? Cut and dry. No gray area there, nothing. They have willfully decided that red meat is the cause of the cancer. This is correlation versus causation. There may be a correlation between cancer risks in red meat when other lifestyle choices are taken into account, right? So, in terms of correlation versus causation, the red meat cannot be proven as causation. Remember, the experimental studies, the controlled studies are the only ones that can prove causation, right? So, it would actually be more reasonable and more accurate to give it a different headline. Wouldn't get nearly as many clicks, not as many people would pay attention to it, but the headline should read something like this. Red meat associated with increased risk of cancer in sedentary individuals who regularly consume refined carbohydrates, sugar, smoke cigarettes, and drink alcohol. See how crazy that is? That should be the headline, if this were 100% honest. But instead, the headline would be red meat linked to increased risk of cancer. Boom, simple, right? That's all you see is the headline. Your clown friends on Facebook share it all over the place. They read the headline, and then they share it. And then their friend reads the headline, and then they share it. Blah, 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 blah. Craziness, right? So the other thing to be careful for is the subjects are often hand-selected. For instance, if you are a 30-year-old woman and you weigh 120 pounds and you're fit as hell and you're doing CrossFit all the time, right? You may see a study, you may decide you're going to go look up fructose. What's the deal with fructose? Justin's already talking about fructose and fruit. Let me figure this out. And you may find a study that says effect of replacing glucose with fructose in overweight middle-aged men. Don't read that study and instantly implement whatever the conclusion was in your own life. Again, you're a 30-pound woman, 30-year-old woman, 120 pounds, crushing CrossFit every day. Don't read the article that says effective replacing glucose with fructose in overweight middle-aged men. They do this a lot. They test for specific subsets of the population, right? So I'll give you an example. When it comes to high-carb diets versus low-carb diets, so people who are genetically insulin sensitive will do better with low-fat diets. They'll do pretty well on it, right? They will almost always be naturally lean. Now, I've personally known a lot of these people who have gone on to make their living with their bodies. When you can eat whatever you want and have 12-pack abs, you can go be a model. You can go be a personal trainer. There's a lot of things you can do that other people can't do. Is it fair? Some say no. I think it's totally fair. People are different. They're born different, different genetics. I get it, right? So the other thing I want to talk about, we talked about causation versus correlation. So let's talk about causes. Because there are a couple types of causes, right? There's proximate cause and there's ultimate cause. So let's break this down for you. Again, I'm not going to get too wordy, the big words, right? So proximate. This means this cause, this proximate cause, is immediately responsible for what is happening. Then there is the ultimate cause. The ultimate cause is what set off the chain of events that led to the proximate cause causing the current problem. Okay? Listen to that a couple times if you need to. So a great example of this was outlined perfectly, and I'm stealing this directly from Dr. Jason Fung in a book called The Obesity Code. I love Jason Fung. He's amazing, right? So in The Obesity Code, he has a great example of this. He puts up the question, why is the boat sinking? Okay? Remember that. Why is the boat sinking? Proximate cause. Gravity is stronger than buoyancy. The boat is sinking because gravity is now stronger than the buoyancy. So the solution would be to reduce gravity by lightening the boat. Let's say getting the water out of the boat. But that does not solve or address the ultimate cause. The ultimate cause is the boat has a large hole in the hull. Until that ultimate cause is dealt with, you're never going to fix the problem. If you focus on the proximate cause, you can't fix the root problem, okay? So, telling that ship captain to take a cup and bail water to make the boat weigh less, to increase buoyancy, is the same as telling an obese person to simply restrict calories. It's the same thing. You are not dealing with the ultimate cause whatsoever. You are only dealing with symptoms. You are only dealing with proximate cause. The symptom, the boat sinking, is a symptom that is because of an ultimate cause, the giant hole in the hull of the boat, okay? Doesn't tell the whole story and never fixes the ultimate issue. So I'm going to give you my favorite example of bad science. Calories, okay? So, is there science behind calories in, calories out? I would venture to say no, but that would be my opinion and me arguing. But technically, yes. And this is something called in vitro science. I'm going to explain to you what in vitro science is. But first, I want to break down exactly why people say calories is the key to weight loss. So people say that 1 pound of fat is 3,500 calories, right? 1 pound of fat is 3,500 calories. So the basic idea is that if you were to eat, say, 500 less calories than you consume each day, that would be burning an additional 500 calories. So if you burn those 500 calories every day for a week, you can lose 1 pound a week, theoretically, by burning an additional 500 calories. But what's really important is this 3,500 calories equals fat, okay? So I'm just gonna leave this here. Fat equals this 3,500 calories. Not gonna get there yet, but that is very important, okay? So here's a great example. This idea that calories tell the whole story. Simply eat less calories than you burn and you'll lose weight, right? Ridiculous. Let me tell you exactly why. This is proven from the time we're children, right? So if you take boys and girls pre-puberty, their body fat percentage will be almost identical, depending on the kid, right? If it's an obese kid, that's different. But if you're taking two average kids before puberty, boy, girl, their body fat percentage will be virtually identical, right? Now, after puberty, the female, by default, will carry 50% more body fat, even though, statistically, on average, boys after puberty eat significantly more calories than the females. So I'm not talking about size. Is the man 6 feet tall? Does the woman grow to be 6 feet tall? I'm talking about body composition. How much stored adipose tissue is on your body? Body fat composition. Okay? So the thing about losing fat, it has nothing to do with the calories themselves, right? We are all humans. Whether we're children or teenagers or adults, we are all humans. The human body works in a specific way. So after puberty, women carry 50% more body fat, even though the boys eat more calories. Why does this happen? Hormones. I've been saying this for 30 weeks. Hormones run the show, namely insulin. But we're not going to get into hormones tonight. We're sticking with the science, right? Hormones run the show. That doesn't change when you are a grown-up. It does not change. The hormones still run the show. Calories in, calories out does not tell the whole story. Not only that, but different substrates, fat, protein, carbohydrates, right? Different substrates are burned at different times under different circumstances in the human body. It's not all the same. And that's why I'm leaving this here, because I want you to remember this. That fat they're talking about is 1 pound of fat is 3,500 stored calories, right? We're gonna talk about that. There are different pathways for energy. Now, I originally wrote notes for this and I went deep. I was gonna tell you about the ATP, CR pathway. I was gonna tell you about the oxidated pathway. I was gonna tell you about the glycolytic pathway. I'm gonna talk about a couple of them, but I'm not gonna get crazy on this shit because it's mind-numbing, honestly. It's mind-numbing, okay? So let's focus on fats and carbohydrates. These are your energy sources in terms of macronutrients. So the body is still gonna get a little bit sciencey. The body can convert glucose, carbohydrates, directly into ATP, right? It can grab glucose, turn it into ATP in the cell, create energy, right? For this reason, the glycolytic pathway, which burns glycogen and glucose, the glycolytic pathway is much faster at producing energy than the oxidative pathway, which consists of the Krebs cycle. This is the only pathway that actually burns fat in the body, and it takes a little longer. There are additional steps. So it's much quicker to create energy in the glycolytic pathway, okay? The problem with that is it's kind of dirty. Releases free radicals. It's like throwing kindling on a fire versus throwing a log on fire, right? Requires way more energy, requires a constant supply of energy, burns dirty, puts ashes out into the air, whereas a big fat log is a much better energy source. Burning fat produces far more ATP for the amount of energy required to create that ATP. Energy is not created or destroyed, it's transferred in the body, right? This could get really tricky, guys. The energy is transferred from one source to another, right? That's how energy is created in the body. Energy is absorbed and it is transferred. That's what happens in these different pathways, right? So the body must first convert fat into acetyl-CoA. Until it's converted, it has to be converted into acetyl-CoA. That acetyl-CoA then has to be turned into ketones before it can be burned in the Krebs cycle for energy, for the massive amount of ATP that it supplies for the body, much more than burning sugar, right? Takes longer, but it's a much cleaner process, yields far more ATP. But the body wants quick energy, just like humans. We take the path of least resistance, right? That's why it's so easy to become a sugar burner and only burn sugar and be metabolically broken, metabolically inflexible, because you're just giving a constant supply of glucose. Your body never has to tap into the fat stores. We know that from the gas tank analogy that we've talked about, right? So I want to explain this to you. The body will only burn fat under specific conditions. Now we're getting back to this, okay? It is only when carbohydrate supply is sufficiently low and energy demand is sufficiently high that the liver will start to convert the accumulated acetyl-CoA from fatty acids into ketone bodies, enter them into the Krebs cycle, where they can be burned to create ADP. Again, this is the only pathway that is responsible for burning fat, so it only happens under specific conditions. Just think about that for a second. This entire equation, this 3,500 calories of stored fat equals 1 pound, right? This entire equation of burn more calories than you eat does not take into consideration any of the pathways for creating ATP, for taking a substrate and turning it into energy. Doesn't take that into consideration at all. So it's simply burn this many calories. But wait a minute. If you're eating plenty of carbohydrates, too many carbohydrates in my opinion, you will only burn calories from glucose. This 1 pound loss thing doesn't say anything about glucose. It just says 3,500 stored calories equals a pound. This is stupid, guys, okay? So understand that. If you're eating plenty of carbohydrates, you are only going to burn calories from glucose. That has nothing to do with stored fat. So how exactly do you plan on tapping into the calories stored in your adipose tissue if your body will only start producing ketones if glucose is sufficiently low and energy demand is sufficiently high? How do you plan on doing that? Scientists, skeptics, naysayers, how do you plan on doing that? How do you get around this problem? How? What is the workaround for this? For real? This is a great example of bad science done in vitro. Let me explain to you what that means. This is science done outside of a living organism. That's literally the definition of in vitro, right? You're talking test tubes, you're talking petri dishes, using Bunsen burners in a lab, whatever the hell, outside of an organism. So you can measure the amount of energy it takes to heat water through 1 degree Celsius, this caloric thing that we talk about. By the way, calories aren't even calories, they're all kcals, they're all kilocalories, right? So that's the thing that we're talking about, this in vitro stuff. This is outside of an organism. You're doing this in a test tube or in a petri dish. This much energy burns this many calories. Congratulations, right? This does not take into account human biology whatsoever. So you have in vitro and you have in vivo, and in vivo is testing things actually within the organism. Doing a test on a human, doing a test on an animal, whatever. This in vitro thing, the body doesn't work like a petri dish. The body doesn't work like a test tube. It doesn't take into consideration hormones, doesn't take into consideration pathways for energy transfer, doesn't take into consideration anything, guys. This is bad science, okay? So the science behind calories in, calories out would be more accurately described as, and I wrote a beautiful description here, and I hope the scientists will change their tune, right? It would be more accurately described as burning an additional 500 calories per day from fat will result in 1 pound of fat loss per week. On top of this, it would have to have a ridiculous subtitle. Something like, when insulin levels are low and blood glucose and glycogen stores are significantly depleted and body fat is the only source of energy left for the body to burn. Then it would also have to outline the following. Eating less calories from carbohydrates allows burning of stored body fat to fuel energy needs. But instead, we get told, calories in, calories out. Ha ha ha, simple. And it doesn't work for anyone, and we have a staggering obesity epidemic that has skyrocketed like a hockey stick over the last 40 years, and nobody's doing anything about it. People are still talking this calories in, calories out shit, right? I know it because I just did another nutrition cert, my specialist in fitness nutrition, right? I'm not gonna name the company directly because I don't know if I'm gonna get shot or something, but it's ridiculous. Page 1 was energy balance. This was meant to be a 4-month course that I was told if I could complete it in 6 weeks, if I tried my very best and prioritized it. Yeah, guys, I completed the entire course in 4 hours, including the hundreds of multiple choice questions, including the long essays, including the case studies, everything, including the final exam. I completed the entire course in 4 hours from the information in my head. This is what drives me crazy when people talk about credentials. The only reason I did this course is because I need continuing education credits for my specialist in sports nutrition credential, which I don't want to lose because if you don't have credentials, nobody listens to you. Calories in, calories out was invented by people with a shitload of credentials, right? I took a 4-month course and did it in 4 hours. Why is that possible from just a musician from Tennessee, right? Guys, be careful with this stuff. Be careful with the experts. Be careful with the science. Be careful with all these things. Page 1 of that book was energy balance. You must eat less calories, right? It literally was like, oh, your client's goal is fat loss and they plateaued. Step 1, decrease their caloric intake by 250 calories. Did they still plateau 2 weeks later? Step 2, oh, they're only working out 3 hours a week. Increase their fitness to 5 to 7 hours per week. 2 weeks later, oh, they've still plateaued. Decrease their caloric intake by another 250 calories. Then 2 weeks later, oh, they've still plateaued. They're only doing 5 to 7 hours in the gym. Increase their gym time to 7 to 9 hours a week. Literally, I shit you not, in a textbook, step by step, that's what they're telling me to do with clients. What? What? This is insane, people. This is insane. This is so basic. I'm getting upset. Let's move on from this section. Actually, let's take a little break. What are you guys thinking so far? Let's talk about this. Give me some comments here. What do we got? We got hellos, first AMA. Yep, we're back up to that one. Not many comments here. I'm going in for a 96-hour goal. For fasting? That's awesome. Killer. Yeah. 96 is my longest too. That's awesome. Max is 72. Keep pushing. Yeah, keep doing fasting. That's great. You guys have any questions about anything I've talked about so far? This science, the in vitro stuff. I actually had the in vitro stuff in my notes saved for last, but I decided that it was relevant to the calories in, calories out conversation. So, yeah, anyway, and you guys will be happy to know that I have more credentials now, so you have a reason to tell your friends to listen to the Justin guy. This credential shit drives me crazy, all right? It's nuts. Mike, you're back. Okay, I know you're keto. You don't necessarily need creatine. I like creatine. I like NutraBio. NutraBio is a great one. NutraBio, NutraBio. That's a great one. Just trying to keep up. We are mad with you. But working on it. 2 weeks now. Yeah, Mike, you told me it was 2 weeks last week, bro. What you talking about? I remember you, son. You said 2 weeks last week, which means you would now be 4 weeks in. Or 3 weeks in, right? All right. True. Yes, Mike. We'll talk about whatever you want in the end, but right now we're talking about something different, all right? So, all right, if you guys don't have any comments, we're going to move on. So I'm going to talk about missing the mark, what I call missing the mark. I hope you got all this. 3,500 calories of stored fat equals 1 pound. They don't differentiate between which calories you need to burn and how to burn them and the different pathways in the body, right? Summary, boom, there you go. Nerdy, I know, crazy. So, let's get into what I call missing the mark. What I mean by this is when we're looking for one particular thing or one particular outcome, it's very easy to put the blinders on, right? All of a sudden you got blinders on. You're looking for one thing. For example, they have run test after test after test on study after study on low carb diets versus low fat diets. So low carb, high fat versus low fat, high carb. And which one is better for weight loss, right? Which one is better for weight loss? So they run these studies. Now the thing is, dieters can absolutely lose weight on both of these plans, but not everyone. It depends on the individual. Details matter, right? I say this all the time. Generally speaking, it will be genetically insulin sensitive people, the people I talked about who become models and personal trainers. These insulin sensitive individuals will do better with a low fat diet. Sure, they can, they do, they will, right? Insulin resistant individuals will do terrible on a low fat diet, on a low fat, high carb diet. They will store fat like nobody's business, right? So insulin sensitive people, they can do low fat, high carb. Insulin resistant people should not do low fat, high carb. It's not gonna work for them, right? That said, people miss specific points. They're so busy proving that you can lose weight on either plan, right? Not taking genetic variabilities into account whatsoever, but that's a different thing. So for instance, studies have definitively proven that low carb dieters can get the same weight loss results without counting calories. I want to be clear about that because I've already told you that calories don't tell the whole story. I've already told you in the last 30 weeks in Clovis that I don't care about calories at a moot point, right? The difference is in low-fat diets, the subjects are always handcuffed by a significant caloric restriction, sometimes up to 30% caloric deficit, right? So what does that prove to us? It proves that low-fat dieters require a caloric deficit to lose weight. And from what we know about BMR and lowering your metabolic rate, this will inevitably lead to a plateau, guaranteed. You can't just lower calories constantly. All of a sudden, to get results, you're going to be at 10 calories a day. That's the way the math will work out, right? So it shows us that low-fat dieters must restrict calories, and they will eventually hit a plateau. So what they're saying is that there is no need to consciously focus on the amount of calories you are eating to eat less of them. You don't have to count them. Your body will automatically eat less if you are eating the correct foods to begin with, okay? Now this may be confusing because a lot of you came to me starving, doing 1,200 calorie diets, 1,100 calorie diets, 1,800 calorie diets. Like, you're used to starving yourself. So yes, I'm making you eat more than you used to because you were literally killing yourself and we had to fix that, right? Think about it. Every box you read, every nutrition fact is based on a 2,000 calorie per day diet. So that means that even the mainstream is saying the average human being needs 2,000 calories, right? A day. And that's the recommended for an average person, right? Which is crazy because everyone's so different. But for you to be eating 800 calories, 1,000 calories, 1,200 calories, definite micronutrient deficiency issues there. It's a starvation diet. It's not necessary, right? So these studies show that if you're eating the correct foods, you don't have to actually calculate your calories or your caloric intake. Your satiety will tell you exactly how much to eat. We talked about this in the Clovis is Not Keto episode. Satiety is most controlled by your protein intake. Hence my protein suggestions, right? So that's the thing. If you're eating the correct foods, the body will regulate itself. kind of like the most popular foods that our ancestors ate. It's almost as if our bodies were designed for specific types of food that have been available to us since we have existed as a species. Kind of sounds like paleo. Interesting. Right? Crazy. So let's talk about another thing with scientists, and that is incentives. So if we talk about incentives, right? Is that how you spell incentives? I can't remember. I don't know why I'm writing incentives. It's not important to be on the board. Don't worry about it. But with incentives, we have the selective reporting of studies. These are things that can happen. Now, again, I'm not demonizing all scientists whatsoever. There are good scientists, there are bad scientists. But I'm talking about some of the issues that you find with bad science. And that is selective reporting of studies, which means that there are certain immoral scientists who will only publish studies if the results support their belief. Whatever they were trying to prove, they will only publish a study if it proves it. If it does not prove it, they won't even publish it. So we never know about it. We never know that they did a study that disproved their hypothesis. They want a certain outcome, they need it to happen, right? The other one is selective reporting of analysis, which means scientists will only publish certain methods that they use to come to their conclusion. They won't publish the other methods that didn't get them to their conclusion, right? This gets really tricky. Now, why does this happen? This is because researchers, generally speaking, actually need certain outcomes in order to advance their career. This is where we run into the crazy government, big pharma, big food pyramid, conspiracy stuff, right? The only reason that we're seeing newly conducted research on things like keto, paleo, low carb, etc., is because there is now a demand for it. With the internet, the rise of information, all these things, people are sharing information. Hey, low carb worked for me, low carb worked for you. Now you got all these people that never had access to this information before because 20 years ago they could guard this stuff better without the internet, right? So the issue is when the food pyramid was the unquestioned king, scientists were at the mercy of funding. So you can't perform a study without funding, right? These scientists were incentivized to confirm outcomes that were in line with the current mainstream, hence food pyramid, big pharma, big food, all that. Big pharma is also one of the biggest contributors to scientific research on the planet, right? They're also responsible for paying for textbooks in medical school. It's crazy, these incentives, right? Now, the other thing is, on a global scale, I'm going to tell you about one of the number one funders of scientific research in the world. Coca-Cola. Correct. I said Coca-Cola globally is one of the biggest funders of scientific research, right? So do you think if Coca-Cola funds a study on sugar and the findings show sugar causes type 2 diabetes and feeds cancer cells, do you think that that study is going to see the light of day? If the scientists definitively prove, or a study that says high fructose corn syrup found in Coca-Cola proven to cause type 2 diabetes and feed cancer cells, do you think that that research is going to see the light of day? No, of course not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not, right? There's no way. Now, in the same way that we expect researchers to be honest, we must also be honest with ourselves, which brings me to my next point. Now, Clovis OGs are going to love this. If you're a Clovis OG, your jaw is going to drop and hit the floor in a second here. Specific circumstances. I'm calling this section of tonight's AMA, When to Change Your Mind. Before I get into this, 1, specific circumstances. 2, details matter. 3, this is self-experimentation. This is not a prescription for you or anybody else or anybody who's new to Clovis. I am re-examining my stance on fruit for myself personally. And I'm going to explain to you why. Again, details matter. Don't get all excited. Don't send me funny emojis right now, right? I have screamed about fruit from the rooftops since week 1. I think it was AMA 6 or something. That was fruit is toxic, right? Something like that. So I want to explain to you, why have I screamed about fruit and fructose from the rooftops for so many weeks? Because 99% of Americans, food pyramid, right? 99% of Americans are getting most of their daily caloric need from carbs, from simple carbs, such as whole grains, etc., right? It's crazy. So most Americans are getting all of their nutrition from carbohydrates. Now, here's what happens with fructose, right? When glycogen stores in liver and muscle cells are full, the body has no choice but to convert excess sugar into harmful fats, namely VLDL, the most harmful type of cholesterol that clogs arteries, right? So fructose is the only sugar processed exclusively in the liver. Now, in order for any kind of sugar, glucose, to get converted into VLDL, this has to be done in the liver, right? Now, fructose is shuttled immediately to the liver, so it literally gets fast-tracked for fat production, okay? So again, details matter, if your glycogen stores are full and you consume fructose, it is going to be converted into VLDL. It's going to be converted into fat. It's extremely lipogenic. It is a bad idea for most people who are coming from a standard American diet, right? Now, scientifically, once fruit enters the liver from the digestive tract, it can only be converted into glucose and put into glycogen stores, or it has to be stored as fat. Those are the only two options, right? So if your glycogen stores are full, you're getting some nasty fat in your system from eating that fructose, from eating that fruit, right? Another issue is fructose does not lower ghrelin, right? Our old friends, we've talked about leptin and ghrelin. Leptin makes you feel full, ghrelin makes you feel hungry as shit, right? Unlike other sugars, ingesting fructose does not lower the ghrelin hormone, okay? It doesn't. So, that's the reason why it was literally the perfect food for our ancestors to binge on in the summertime. It's very easy to overeat. It's much easier to overeat fruit than it is leafy green vegetables or something like that because it doesn't suppress your appetite, right? So you can just keep eating, right? So our ancestors come across fruit in August. They eat as much as they can for the purpose of storing body fat to survive the winter. It's a fantastic food for storing body fat, right? So that's, again, this all matters, but the details matter. So I've been experimenting with myself, okay? My body fat is very low, okay? And I eat a very low carbohydrate diet. Under 50 grams net per day, around 10% of daily calories, right? I eat virtually zero sugar. There is no simple sugar in my diet whatsoever, okay? If I eat my typical daily diet and do my usual high-intensity workout for that day with very low body fat, for me as an individual, the trade-off of sugar for micronutrients found in, say, half a cup of in-season organic blueberries or half a plantain may very well be worth it. But again, this is one specific circumstance, and I have just started researching this, right? So if you are overweight, I simply cannot recommend this at all. I can't recommend it until we get your body fat, until we get things under control, okay? So we've covered a lot here. Now, don't go out and eat fruit. I'm just trying to explain to you that this learn, unlearn, relearn thing, this applies to me as well, right? So I want to learn things situationally so I can deal with each and every client that comes to me. If I find a client who's a male, my build, my body fat, my activity level, I can be a little more lenient with something like fruit, right? So that's the thing, is I need to learn, unlearn, relearn as well, but I am not changing my recommendations on fruit whatsoever. Just know that, just to be clear. I just wanted to outline, we have to be as honest as we expect our scientists and researchers to be. Okay, so let's take a quick break. And the next section we're going to move into is what you can do about it. So we're doing pretty good on time here. So we're going to talk what you can do about all this. Ghrelin is not sugar. Ghrelin is the hormone that tells your body you're hungry. It's literally the hunger hormone. My cursor was over the emojis. I know you did. I know it was. And there goes Anna with her fruit, right? With your primal fruit. I don't want to hear it. I'm still anti, I promise you. What else we got? Hunger hormone, gotcha, yep. Any other comments? You guys got questions about this? Science stuff, anything? See, that's the other thing too. When we get into episodes like this, I get a little nervous because I think I feel like it's gonna be crickets when we talk about this stuff because it's just, it's kind of advanced. We're getting into advanced here, you know? So it's a little tricky. I guess we're gonna move on if we don't have any comments. So let's go to what you can do about all this, okay? Because I think that's really important, is what can you do as an average person just trying to figure out exactly how to expand your knowledge. And maybe you don't want it to be that Justin and Clovis is your only source of income. I say this to people all the time. Go out and prove me wrong. Go out and prove me wrong, right? I did the study I did the talk at Warner Music Group, the corporate building downtown, and I gave a nutrition talk, and I started it with, nothing I'm about to tell you is an opinion piece. This is irrefutable science. If you can find me science that disproves what I have taught you here, bring it to me and I will pay you cash. That's how I operate, right? So go out, prove me wrong, find some stuff for me. So let's talk about what you can look for when reading studies on your own, okay? So I recommend a couple places. The one thing you don't want to do, I want to be clear about this. The one thing you don't want to do is get on Google and search, is fruit toxic? And click on the first thing that comes up in the Google paid ads section or the most popular link or whatever from some blogger what's-her-face who has no idea what she's talking about. Literally none. This is not how you do nutrition research. It is not, unless it is from very specific trusted sources who are tried and true, who have been doing this for decades and have an impeccable record with honesty and truthfulness, okay? And there are a few of those people, and I'm gonna share them with you at the end of this episode, okay? So what you wanna do is there's PubMed. PubMed is a great resource, and Google Scholar, okay? Not Google, Google Scholar. You can type in at PubMed or Google Scholar, you can type in just about anything you can think of. You can type in fructose, you can type in glucagon, you can type in insulin, you can type in resistance training, endurance training, whatever you want to do, and you will find studies on it. Just be careful how you read them. Now we're going to talk about how to read them, okay? When you find a study on your topic, what should you look for? One, you want to look for length. Length of study is important because you can have, for example, someone follows a vegan diet and they lose a bunch of weight because they cut out processed sugars, and then 6 months later they're on death's door, right? Because they have a micronutrient deficiency or whatever. The timing is everything. You could have fantastic results on a vegan diet in 2 weeks and almost die after a year. Literally, that can happen. It happens to people. There's stories about it all the time. Google it, right? So an example of this is the short-term versus long-term. The results can be drastically different, short-term versus long. So look at the duration of the study. But again, because of this metabolic ward issue, it's hard to do long-term studies. But an example is switching athletes to low-carb diets and then testing them for performance over the next 7 days. This is simply stupid. It's as bad as science gets, right? You're gonna switch a highly active, high-output, high-performance athlete to a low-carbohydrate diet, which you're probably cutting their carbs by more than half, and then go tell them to work out. We're going to measure your progress over the next 7 days. When you are in the middle of your detox, you are metabolically broken, you're only burning sugar, you are not metabolically flexible. So in the middle of your detox, we're going to test your performance. And we're going to see how much your performance has suffered. Then we're going to put an article out that says performance shown to suffer with the ketogenic diet. That's a great example of bad science, right? Makes zero sense, okay? Now, well-designed studies, like the FASTER study, I won't put that there, but you can look up the FASTER study. The FASTER study was a fantastically designed study, and it tracked endurance athletes and performance in endurance athletes over the course of 20 months. And they showed significant, extraordinary results in terms of fat adaptation, mobilizing fatty acids for energy, energy output, all these things studied over the course of 20 months. 20 months. Details matter. The same 7-day study may have shown poor results, and a 20-month study shows fantastic results. That's crazy, right? Remember that. So the other thing we want to talk about, so we talked about length. Number 2 is we talked about, I'll just put, I won't put in, but number 2, we talked about vitro and vivo, right? Outside of the organism, inside of the organism, this is a big deal. If you're worried about nutrition, you probably don't want to worry too much about in vitro studies because it doesn't take into consideration all the things happening in your digestive tract. It doesn't take biology into account whatsoever. It's silly, right? Now, the other thing you want to talk about is humans or animals. So let's just put species, right? Now, granted, do we share 99% of our DNA with chimpanzees? Do we share 99.7% of our DNA with lab mice? Sure, we share a whole lot of DNA with those animals. Are we those animals? No, not even close. If you look at the difference between a human being and an adult human, the fact that that's barely a percentage point difference in DNA shows just how drastically different things can change with small percentage points, right? So why would we just consider that they are exactly like us? Is it the closest thing we have without cutting humans open and torturing humans? Yeah, sure, it is. But that doesn't mean it's exact, right? Now, Jason Fung, again, Dr. Jason Fung, one of my trusted sources, is fantastic for this. And in his books, namely the obesity code, he only cites human studies. I think that's fantastic. It's an entire book that only cites human studies. I wish everybody did this, okay? Now, the other thing to remember is if it's an experimental study, was it double-blind? So I'll just put blind, placebo. Was it double-blind, placebo-controlled? The gold standard of experimental studies. Was it that? Now, another thing I want to talk about is risk, okay? Okay, I want to talk about risk. And we're talking about absolute risk and relative risk. And the reason I want to talk about this is because this is my favorite form of trickery, these sneaky bastards. Let's talk about absolute versus relative risk. So let's say there is a specific treatment that reduces the risk of a disease from 2% to 1%. So you have a specific disease. Let's say the risk factor for getting this disease is 2%. Now you have a treatment that lowers that risk from 2% to 1%, right? The risk of actually having that disease is virtually 0%. 2 to 1, virtually 0%. You have a 98 or a 99% chance of not developing that disease at all. So then they do a test on some treatment that lowers it from 2% to 1%, but what will the headline read? A shady researcher may put out a headline that says, this treatment decreases your risk of this particular disease by 50%. Do you see how that messes with people's brains? You have to read the actual studies themselves. You have to read the studies themselves. If they make citations, you have to look at the citations and those articles that they cited, because a lot of times people will cite articles and say, this proves the same thing. And then you go read the study and you're like, this proved the exact opposite. What the hell are you talking about? This is crazy. But nobody's proofreading, nobody's checking their work, right? So you literally could have like a guy say, red meat causes cancer, and I can cite study X. And then you go down to the footnotes and you click on study X and you read it, and the headline could literally be, red meat shows no association with cancer. And that guy is just flat out lying in his published paper. Believe it or not, this stuff happens, guys. So this absolute relative risk is a real good way to be sneaky as shit, right? Really, really sneaky. You can say like, this lowers risk of blah, blah, blah by 50%, right? Minuscule numbers that mean almost nothing can be presented as massive. And it's simply not true, okay? So the other thing you have to look at, I'm running out of space here, guys. We'll put number 6 is what we already talked about, funding. Who funded the study? Where did the money come from for the study? What kind of incentives does the funder have improving specific things? What kind of incentivization does the researcher have for furthering their career, et cetera, right? These are the things you have to look out for when you are looking into clinical data. So that's basically the presentation for today, but there is something that I want to get into here. What can you do, okay? Here are some bullet points of what you can do, but I want to explain something to you. And I want to explain this whole Clovis is not keto, Clovis is not paleo, Clovis is not Atkins, Clovis is not that, right? The danger of that. You may think it's harmless to call my protocol that I worked very hard on something that it is not, right? I want to explain why that is so dangerous. So I hope you guys have all this. So here's what I want to talk about. What is my favorite form of science, period? My favorite form of science is original research done by you. Okay? I don't care about the studies. There may be clinical studies that prove something is horrible for you, and you try it as an individual and experience the best health you've ever experienced, right? There are certain things that doesn't hold true for, like if you drink gallons of trans fat, you're gonna have a lot of problems, right? But generally speaking, my favorite type of science is original research done by you, the individual, self-experimentation. You see what I'm saying? Now, the most common rebuttal you're gonna get from people, and you guys tell me this all the time, right? Remember, I constantly feel like I'm defending you against your friends and family, which I don't care about at all. I don't care if your husband's a dick. I have nothing to explain to that guy. Nothing, okay? Sorry. So, the thing is, the pushback that you're gonna get, the most common rebuttal you're gonna get is just people who throw their hands up and go, that doesn't work, or that's crazy. Everybody knows that doesn't work. Everybody, right? This is usually said by people who are completely unwilling. They will not try what you are proposing to them because they have insecurities, because they have doubts, because they have lack of willpower. They know that they can't do it. They don't have discipline. They can't do it, right? So the best way to get you to stop talking about it is to shit on you and your dreams, right? So this is coming from people who will not try. They won't try the thing you're talking about. They won't try Clovis. It's out of their head. Don't try to convince them. It's not worth wasting your time, right? If someone has tried it, and I put it in quotations because we're going to get to a very important part. If somebody has tried it, they will say a phrase such as, I tried that, it didn't work for me. We've all heard that from people. I tried that, it didn't work for me. This is why it is so dangerous to call Clovis keto or paleo. No. Call it Clovis. Why? Because the second you say, oh, it's kind of like keto, oh, it's kind of like paleo, then you open the door for people, and there are millions of them, who get to say accurately, oh, keto, I tried that, it didn't work for me. They're immediately turned off by Clovis right off the bat, right? Or, oh, paleo, I tried that, it didn't work for me. I gained weight. I was eating 30 servings of fruit a day and I gained weight, right? I tried that, it doesn't work for me. Immediate turn off. You're turning people off from Clovis. Every time you call Clovis keto or paleo or kind of like keto or kind of like paleo or paleo plus keto plus Atkins plus low lectin plus anti-inflammation, all the things that we've talked about, right? When you give it a label besides Clovis, you're confusing people. You're turning people away, you're turning people off, right? Even when you call it low carb, when you say, hey, it's low carb, right? People associate that with Atkins, they associate it with keto, they associate it with failure. It becomes an immediate turnoff, okay? So it's literally the same as a girl blaming her current boyfriend for her ex-boyfriend's behavior. That's what it is. My ex-boyfriend cheated on me. You're just gonna cheat on me too. You're a scumbag. This is crazy girl stuff, right? Blaming Clovis on keto or paleo, that's crazy girl behavior. Don't do it, okay? So that's really important, but I digress. We can get out crazy girl stuff. So an example of self-experimentation and what happens and why this is difficult for people. If you take an obese person and they're seeing a doctor, the doctor has them try traditional weight loss methods and nothing works. Roller coaster, up, down, no sustainable change, right? The client feels awful, they're not getting any meaningful results, they're miserable. The doctor says, try harder, work out more, eat less, keep counting calories, or you're lying, you're not telling me the truth, you're cheating somewhere, right? Then that same patient finds Justin and Clovis. They lower carbohydrates, increase protein intake, a little more healthy fats, cut out junky processed foods, right? Switch to a whole foods diet. They lose a ton of fat almost effortlessly. They walk into the doctor. The doctor tells them, all that fat will kill you. Human beings need carbohydrates, right? Two statements that are both completely inaccurate, and they completely ignore the fact that the individual has just conducted their own scientific study. They have done their own research. And the only thing that has worked for them successfully is now being questioned for safety. And it never ceases to amaze me how far doctors will go. Mainstream doctors will stick to their guns even after running blood work and seeing significant improvement in every possible category. Cholesterol, inflammation, fasting glucose, you name it, whatever. They still end the appointment with a snarky comment like, sure, it's working now, but these things never last. Just be careful, right? Ridiculous. Why do they behave that way? Why do they get defensive? Because they have been exposed. They have been exposed to know nothing about nutrition, and they should stop telling people what to do. This is how you get obese doctors. If you walk into a doctor's office and your doctor is fat, walk out and get a new one. Period. I don't care how harsh that sounds. You just can't. You can't do that, right? It's crazy because they're gonna stick their little nose in and they're gonna give you nutrition advice when they're a doctor. They're not trained in nutrition. It's insane. Okay, so to give you a couple examples, I'm gonna say, let's see how much time we have. Yeah, 9:01. Okay, I'm gonna go quick through this. So I'm gonna tell you guys who I'm trusting right now. Okay. Now, what I mean by that is you guys have to understand that the vast majority of what went into Clovis is clinical research, studying scientific data, studying studies, and textbooks. I have gone deep, deep, deep in a boatload of textbooks. I do things a little bit differently than the average person when it comes to research. Obviously, or the average person would start a Clovis, and they don't. I do, right? So it's a different kind of research. That said, there are people who are way better at research than I am. There are people who were research biochemists, such as Rob Wolf. There are people that I respect tremendously. I don't think of myself as an expert in anything, period. I'm probably an expert in dueling pianos. Yeah, that's true. It's the only thing I'll call myself an expert in, right? But I'm just a normal guy who figured shit out, right? So I'm gonna tell you some of the people that I trust outside of clinical data and textbooks, right? When I'm not studying those things, there are people that are my go-tos for what I told you are review articles, getting a breakdown of the most up-to-date studies, a compilation of them, let's say, for specific topics, right? So I already told you. Dr. Jason Fung, fantastic. He wrote The Complete Guide to Fasting. He wrote The Obesity Code. Dude's awesome. Personal friend and jiu-jitsu buddy. I'm gonna get you next time, dude. I'm a blue belt now. Rob Wolf is freaking fantastic. Former research biochemist. His credentials are through the roof. His history of results in people is insane. His latest book, Wired to Eat, is fantastic. Talks about the insulin blood glucose thing, carbohydrates, how fruit may work better for some people than brown rice or white rice, or sweet potatoes may work better for some people than plantains. Figure that out. That's called Wired to Eat. Another great one is Dr. Rhonda Patrick. Now, fair warning, Rhonda Patrick talks over my head all the time. She definitely is probably going to talk over your head. The woman is brilliant. She's one of the smartest nutrition minds I've ever heard speak ever. But her YouTube channel has her podcast. So it has her podcast up there, and then she actually puts it. There's a big complicated word like lipolysis or something like that. She'll give you the definition. It's really great. She spends a lot of time in these videos. You should check her out. She's awesome. Another one is Dr. Peter Attia. He's great, okay? Check out Peter Attia. He's got a new podcast called the Peter Attia Drive. One that we talked about another week is Dr. Ted Nyman. He's great for talking about this whole protein versus energy thing. That's fantastic. Another guy you guys might already know is Chris Kresser. Chris Kresser, he's fantastic. And another guy is Gary Taubes. Now, Gary Taubes is interesting because Gary Taubes is a journalist, but he wrote Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It, which I think is one of the most important nutrition minds of all time. Gary Taubes is a journalist, so he has no skin in the game. Not a nutritionist, not a doctor, not anything. He literally just went through the research from far before the food pyramid till now and just explained things like there is no link between saturated fat and heart disease, like that carbohydrates cause obesity, period. It's the insulin response and blood glucose and all these things, right? He is fantastic to check out. Check out Gary Taubes. He is awesome. Now, a lot of you, Rhonda is your longtime friend? No kidding. I love Rhonda. I support Rhonda's Patreon. Tell her that you just watched a video from Clovis Nutrition or Clovis, whatever you want to say. I love Rhonda. Get me in touch with Rhonda. You'll be my best friend forever. So, the other thing I want to talk about is there's going to be a lot of people here, right? I might list this out, and people are going to say, what about this guy? What about this guy? What about this guy, right? All of these influencers. There is a reason why my list is so small, right? Another one that I'll add to this, actually, he has nothing to do with nutrition, is Tim Ferriss. This guy has a gambit of incredible people on his podcast, and you can look at Tools of Titans or Tribe of Mentors or all these incredible books, right? Fantastic. He knows so much. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, right? So check him out. All these people, I absolutely love them. They're fantastic. And there's a reason why I am selecting these individuals. not certain people that run giant multi-million-dollar empires based on things like paleo or whatever. Because what you see right now, what has happened? If you've been in this space for any period of time, the biggest paleo influencers out there, so it was all paleo, right? Paleo's right for everybody. Buy my paleo plan, buy my paleo ebook, get on my paleo newsletter, buy my paleo products, blah, 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 blah. Paleo is everything, it's for everyone, right? That's what happened. Now, since paleo, the bell curve has kind of tapped off a little bit, right? What has happened? Every single one of those big money influencers has made the shift into keto. Keto, keto, keto. Everyone be keto. You all need to be keto. This will save your life. Buy my keto class. Buy my keto thing. Buy my keto that. Buy my keto this. They literally transformed from multi-million-dollar paleo companies to multi-million-dollar keto companies. Keto doesn't work for everyone. I had a great talk with my friend the other day who tried keto for strict 2 weeks, like really, really strict, followed it perfectly, and gained fat, right? Keto is not for everyone. So you have these guys that made millions of dollars off paleo who are now telling everyone that keto is right for them. And again, the camps, they tell the people if it doesn't work for you, you're not doing it right. Right? It's your fault. It's not the protocol's fault. Keto isn't right for everyone. Keto isn't right for me. I have mapped my entire gut microbiome. I have done crazy amounts of blood work for thousands and thousands of dollars and food intolerances and everything that you can think of. I have determined definitively that a strict ketogenic diet does not work for me. I will store body fat, period. That is the way my genetics work, right? You don't have to spend thousands of dollars to figure it out. You can do it with scientific experimentation, right? But in the same sense, I worked with a functional medicine doctor, did a tremendous amount of expensive testing, and figured out all this stuff and did it through trial and error with my own diet, right? I've been strict keto. We're doing daily blood draws for a very long time, right? I've done all this stuff. You have to figure out what works for you. For you. So there's a certain reason why certain known big-ass influencers are not on this list. Plus, there are some big-ass influencers who I've met in real life multiple times, and they're dicks. So they're never going to be on my podcast or my Facebook Lives. So anyway, I'm going to leave their names out of this. But anyway, paleo, keto, they're obsessed. They switch from one thing to another. They follow the bell curves to make a bunch of money, right? Insane. So I don't cite those people. All right, we're going to jump into live Q&A here, but something that I promised I would talk about, and I'll leave this up here for this, but I promised I would talk about the testimony winner. We held a testimony contest in I Am Clovis and Clovis Kids. Now, unfortunately, Clovis Kids, I did not get enough submissions, okay? I only got a couple of submissions in there. So Clovis Kids, step up your game, yo. What's happening, all right? So I'm gonna figure out what to do for the people who did submit. Thank you, you guys are awesome. I appreciate it. You know who you are. I'm gonna do something to take care of you in some way. So the Clovis testimony contest, the I Am Clovis testimony contest. I had to pick a winner and it sucked. This was the hardest thing I've ever done for Clovis ever. Literally, it was the hardest thing I've ever done for Clovis. It was brutal. I didn't like it. Didn't make me feel good. It was bad, right? So I did pick a winner because I had to. I love you all, the rest of you. I hate that I had to say this, that I even have to say this out loud right now, okay? My testimony winner for the I Am Clovis contest is Shannon Jordan. I'll explain to you why here. Shannon, you won. Awesome, congratulations. You won $200 cash. We didn't get quite enough people to get that cash pool up to 400, but you just won $200. So awesome, congrats. Now I want to talk to people about this for a second, right? It's not about the weight loss. So I'm going to get to that last. I told you guys that I was going to basically look at the most emotionally compelling testimony, and there were a lot of them. I'm not going to lie to you. I am very alpha. I am very male, and I definitely was brought to tears multiple times watching these. I had to gather myself. I couldn't watch them back to back. Shit, it'll get me upset right now, literally. I could not watch them back to back. It was too much. It was just too much. The transformations are fantastic, right? So it's not about the weight loss. I'm gonna get to that last thing. But what happened with Shannon is her journey is really lifelong, but it really begins with the death of her mother, right? So she sent me this testimony. I'm assuming some of this is public at least. But so what happened was it was cancer, and she was the caretaker for her mother. Finding out that they're giving her all the sugar in the world. It's basically give your mom whatever she wants, make her comfortable with fruit juice and fruit and carbohydrates and whatever else, right? And she knew that this was wrong. She felt it in her heart, right? She really did. She knew that this wasn't the way to handle it. She knew that she was basically feeding the disease, right? And she talks about this in her video. That is very painful. There's a lot of regret associated with this. I know tons of you are this way, and I'm gonna tell you a story. I'm gonna try not to cry. So my dad's mom had a stroke, and I was already Mr. Justin from Clovis at that point, right? This was just now a couple years ago. So we were going to this hospice care place, nursing home, whatever you want to call it, and literally sneaking in Clovis foods, sneaking in paleo powder, sneaking in turmeric, sneaking in anti-inflammatories, whatever we could, right? Sneaking in these things to get my grandmother the proper nutrition that she needed, because the food there was shit, right? And they literally would try to confiscate the foods and kick us out of the hospital. Literally. They would try to kick us out for bringing in healthy foods. That's how twisted this shit is, right? So I got that. I understood that as soon as Shannon talked about that, I'm losing it. I'm like, God, this is crazy, right? That regret feeling, because my grandmother didn't make it either, you know? And that feeling that you have that you fed this issue or this problem or something like that, it's really intense, right? So she broke the cycle. She wasn't gonna let that happen, right? She absolutely wasn't gonna let that happen. So she started exploring how to change this for herself, right? So her kids wouldn't have to go through what she went through, right? And she finds Clovis. This part of the testimony got me too. So all good, perfect, thank you, Shannon. So this part of the testimony was fantastic too. She found Clovis and compared it to her own research. She got into the academy, went through all the things I was saying, and literally was trying to find any way in which she could prove me wrong. I love that. I want all of you to do that. All of you, constantly try to do that. Try to find something that works for you that I'm not currently promoting or whatever, right? Do that. So she tried to prove me wrong, first things first. And she was unsuccessful, I might add. That's what got her sold, right? That's what happened. Tried to prove me wrong, unsuccessful. So it genuinely changed her life. But what really struck me, and she said I can talk about this stuff so cool, is she had a UV reaction, literally like an allergy to the sun for 26 plus years, right? So bad she'd sometimes end up hospitalized, which is crazy. So man, she spent all summers for the last 20 years covered up completely, even in summertime. So she recently wore a short sleeve t-shirt for the first time in 20 plus years. That's crazy. She's planning outdoor activities with her friends and stuff. This UV reaction is completely gone. Completely gone. We get the internal set up correctly, right? And the external, you're no longer so vulnerable to it. It's pretty crazy. So anyway, she's literally gotten her life back. It's amazing. She has 8 kids. She's instilling this stuff in her kids. It's just, Shannon, you're friggin' awesome. It's great. Since you gave me the testimony video, I'm gonna tell people some numbers. 106 days. She's lost 50 pounds, 6 to 7 inches on her waist alone, gone down 3 full sizes. But for me, it really was the mindset shift. That mindset shift just nailed me. And the fact that she's doing this with her kids, for her kids, this is a legacy play. This is really what got me, it's a legacy play, everybody. Like, for real. This is now Shannon's legacy. She gets to pass this on. It's gonna get passed down to her kids, it's gonna get passed on to her grandkids, right? We think a lot of this shit is genetic, and it's not, right? My grandma got Alzheimer's, my mom got Alzheimer's, I'm gonna get Alzheimer's. No, you're just eating the same foods that you were raised eating, right? So Shannon, you're breaking the cycle. Thank you, you won. Congratulations. Now that said, almost every single one of you brought me to tears. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. This was a near impossible decision. Literally the hardest thing I've ever done with Clovis. Harder than any AMA, harder than work in the office on Shopify or whatever. This was freaking brutal. I absolutely hated that I had to actually choose a winner. So I'm sorry if you didn't win. Shannon, congratulations. All of you, thank you so much for letting me do this work. It's crazy. These testimony videos light fires under me in ways that you cannot imagine. I am a particularly kind of insane, and that means I'm very driven, and I'm very alpha, and I'm very type A, and all these things, right? So when you light these fires up underneath me, it just means that more things are gonna happen. My motivation is through the roof. Again, I rely on discipline, but hey, little boost of motivation from a testimony video never hurt anybody. So thank you guys so much for all of that. All right, thank you, genuinely. Live Q&A, let's take a couple questions. We'll wrap this thing up. What do you guys want to talk about? Shannon, you and I will get together and we'll talk about the your prize money and all that. So what we got here? We can talk about these people. We can talk about whatever you guys want. Literally any questions that you have, hit me right now and we'll chat about it. What do you guys got? AMA number 30, Bad Science. So I hope I explained a little bit about bad science. Really, it's tough. I don't want to go through. There's a really funny book. It's actually called Bad Science. It's really funny. They attack everything from like homeopathy to like all these different things, and it's really funny. It's really fun to read. There's a lot of really bad science. They talk about like the detox that you put your feet in, the baths that turn brown, which is literally like a magic trick. It's ridiculous. There's just a lot of stuff. Check out the book Bad Science. That's if you want to see like literally he just goes through science and just debunks it in a hilarious way. It's like it's hilarious that people spend money on things they spend money on because they think there's science behind it. It'll be completely different than this whole episode was, but you can check out that. Literally, the book's just called Bad Science. What else we got here? There was a contest, yes, but not here, Mike. It's in I Am Clovis. You need a custom plan. You need a custom plan. Let's put this up. Custom plans are found at Clovis.store. Go to Clovis.store, you find the Perfect Paleo Powder, you find all my custom nutrition plans, my protocols, you can find my ebooks, you can find some cool merch, we got shaker bottles, we got t-shirts, all these things. Can't do keto, lost my hair. Yeah, what did we talk about as one of the major symptoms of protein deficiency? Thinning hair, people being cold hands, all these things, right? It's crazy. We grew up together since elementary school. That's fantastic. I respect that woman. Oh God, she will never understand the level of respect. Rhonda Patrick. Cannot understand how much I respect her. It's ridiculous. What else we got here? Jason Fung, you got some good books from him. Killer, awesome. My kid's doctor said my kids have to drink milk, right? That doctor's a jackass. Fire him. That happens in a lot of public school systems too. They have mandatory milk programs, which is crazy. Are you kidding me? If I have a kid and I find out that you're giving my kid milk, like sugary ass feedlot milk without consulting me, you have a real problem, right? Crazy. So how's Clovis different? Okay, Dana, good question. You're gonna wanna go back to AMA number, I don't know off the top of my head, honestly. There's an AMA called What Makes Clovis Different and Why You Need It. Now the last one we did, if you're asking specifically about the difference between Clovis and keto, there's literally an AMA at, okay, so clovis.store/AMA. If you go to clovis.store/AMA, the last episode you're gonna see is episode number 29, Clovis is Not Keto. So go listen to Clovis is Not Keto. It's available on the podcast, The Perfect Podcast with Justin Nault. It's on iTunes, it's on Spotify, it's on Google Play, everywhere. You can watch the video with the show notes at clovis.store/AMA. Go watch that one. It's called Clovis is Not Keto. And it will tell you all of the major differences between Clovis and keto. That's really important. Go check that out. Why can't people just be honest? I don't know. It's incredibly frustrating. What else we got? He's been fired. Just shared this AMA with Rhonda. Thank you so much. That's awesome. I really appreciate it. What service did you use to check your gut biome? Did you need a prescription? Yes, it depends. So there are a lot of them popping up that don't give you any meaningful information whatsoever. There's a lot of them that are just, they'll tell you have this many bacteroidetes, or you have this many firmicutes, or you compare to the rest of the population in this way, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't tell you anything. There's really no actionable data. The best way to do this is with a functional medicine doctor and a full GI map. So I did one from a company called Genova Diagnostics, which was a full GI map. But yes, I needed a doctor to do that in the proper way. I mean, you can go spend your money, $100, whatever, on these other mapping companies, and they're not gonna tell you anything, and it's not. I find that they're not accurate. There's a lot of dietary recommendations I've seen and stuff from these new companies popping up, and I really just don't agree with them at all, like at all. So I'm losing inches everywhere, but my stomach seems to be lagging a lot. Yeah, so anytime that you have spot reduction, when you're worried about spot reduction, specific spots, this is all hormonal imbalance. So for you, Carla, as new as you are, it's still gonna take some time. For sure, it will absolutely take some time. This could be a cortisol issue, it could be an inflammation issue, it could be a number of things, right? Could be a sleep issue. A lot of things go into body fat being stored, but it is all associated with hormones. Cortisol being a big one for storing body fat in the abdomen. What else we got here? All right, I'm back to can't do keto. Rob Wolf, kids doctor. What else we got? Kids? Let's see. All right, inches everywhere. Service for gut microbiome, we got that one. Mac and cheese is actually okay for them. Good Lord. That doctor needs a solid open hand slap. Krista, thank you so much for sharing. What is Clovis? Why is Clovis different? Why you need it? What should we be giving them other than milk? You don't give them feedlot, right? So all you have to do, just do this Google search, right? Literally just Google calcium-rich vegetables, right? There's nothing in milk that you can't get from Whole Foods. There is nothing. Not to mention, most of the milk you get is actually ridiculously low in calcium and has to be fortified with calcium, like fortified with calcium or fortified with vitamin D. They have to add these synthetic supplements in after the fact, right? Milk is a giant cup full of sugar. That's all there is to it. It's a giant cup full of sugar and inflammation, and the fat in it is from fat from feedlot animals that have stored toxins and stored hormones and everything. You don't want your kid touching milk. I mean, maybe if you got 100% pasture-raised, grass-fed, raw milk, if you got that, which is actually very difficult to come by, raw milk, maybe, but again, it's just, I would just remove the habit completely, honestly. People think that they're getting calcium. Milk, feedlot milk can actually be calcium leaching. It can actually lower calcium levels in your body. It's really, really nasty stuff. It's just marketing. The Gut Milk campaign. That's why everybody thinks milk is good, because of a freaking Gut Milk campaign that was masterfully marketed with little mustaches on celebrities. It's ridiculous. All those celebrities need a slap for being a part of that. What else we got? Girl microbiome. Oh, okay, yeah. So that's the thing, Jess. There is no the science behind BMI. It's the best thing that we have, which I don't even understand why it's still used. I really don't. I guess if you were working with like a remote client and they had no data for you, but BMI is much different than body composition, right? I'm running out of room. Body composition, like I'll give you an example. Right now, I sit somewhere between 11 and 12.5% body fat. It's actually probably lower because I'm now 76 hours fasted, 77 hours fasted now, but I'm gonna track it whenever I decide to stop this thing. I'm gonna track and see how much body fat I lost. It doesn't take into consideration body fat at all. So my height and weight, I'm considered overweight according to BMI. It's insane. That's so crazy, right? How can I be considered overweight? Bodybuilders would be considered overweight. Lean, muscular people are considered overweight. It's just BMI is really not, I think it's useless. I think it's useless unless you have, like I said, a specific person who's in California and refuses to give me caliper measurements or refuses to do some other kind of body composition testing or just says, I'm gonna send you my age, height, and weight. And that's the only thing I have to go off of is BMI, but it simply doesn't tell the whole story. Never has, never will. Body composition is the way to go. That's why I always say this when I make custom plans, is that body weight and BMI are terrible ways to track. Terrible. You want body composition and you want inches. I could measure your thigh, your quad, and your hamstring, right? I could wrap a measuring tape around that and say, oh, it's this many inches. What does that tell me? That tells me exactly nothing. I don't know how much muscle, I don't know how much fat. That's why BMI is garbage when compared to body composition. Dana, when you say probably have to go farther back, what do you mean? For the differences between Clovis and keto? Yeah, look up number 29. You need to go no further than number 29. I literally spell out exactly why Clovis is different than keto. So check that one out. You don't need to go further to figure out why Clovis is different. That number 29 is literally all you need. Number 29 and what makes Clovis different, those are the best two to listen to. Do those two and you'll be fine. My arms haven't shrunk at all. I'm down and I'm 120 pounds down. Yeah, it makes sense. This is a big one for triceps as well. A lot of women will store body fat in that tricep area. So it's. I just went through this with somebody the other day. We were measuring body fat, and the only troublesome area was really that tricep, which again, it's a hormonal imbalance. In the triceps, it can also be cortisol issues. There's reasons for these things. Here's the thing. Depending on age too, I'm actually a pretty big fan of hormone replacement therapy. Honestly, depending on age, depending on circumstance, you have to get those hormones balanced. The other thing to worry about is, are you on something like birth control? Are you on something like an antidepressant? Are you on an anti-anxiety medication? There are all these things that really impact your hormone levels, that really jack things up, that imbalance them. It's strange looking to the eyes for one particular part of the body to just be full of fat and the other parts are not. Right? That's very strange. That is an actual imbalance in the body that is caused by a hormonal imbalance internally. So you gotta get the hormones worked out. Again, a functional medicine doctor, great for this. I can't recommend functional medicine doctors enough. Thank you, Anna, appreciate it. Papa Nault, He's the best. What's up, Dad? Oh, he's here. Hey. Traveling in New England. Just got back from dinner. Yeah, man. What's up? Glad you made it, dude. All right. Questions? Is that it? What time we got? It's probably, what, is it 9:30 yet? Yes, 9:32. All right, let's wrap this thing up. This was AMA number 30. 30 weeks, everybody. That's crazy. AMA number 30. This one was called Bad Science. I hope you got a lot out of it. I hope you learned. I really hope that you learned a lot from this one. And if you have any other questions, let me know. Check out the other people that I gave you here. Like, for real, I don't need to be your only source of information. I don't roll that way. I learn from other people. I curate information and give it to you. That's how we do this thing. That's how Clovis operates, okay? So I really want you guys to dig deeper. Do your own research. Figure some things out. Go to PubMed and bring up a random study and just see how crazy it looks and how it is to decipher that kind of thing. If you've never done that, go do it, right? It's a lot different than reading a blog from some person who you don't know what they know, right? So check that stuff out. Check out the resources. Check out Jason Fung, Rob Wolf, Chris Kresser, Ted Naiman, Dr. Peter Attia, Dr. Rhonda Patrick, all these incredible people. Go check them out. Check out their work. Podcasts are a great place to start. You can just listen in the car on the way to work. Don't let that be dead time. If you have a commute to and from work, don't waste your life. You can listen to podcasts, listen to Audible, learn some things. It's a really efficient way to get information in your noggin. Do it. Also, listen to the Perfect Podcast with Justin Nault, of course. So thank you guys for everything. This was a great episode. Thank you, Shannon, testimony winner. Congratulations. Guys, go to clovis.store. Check out everything you could possibly want with Clovis. Clovis.store/AMA to check out the previous AMAs, all the things we've talked about over the last 30 weeks. Thank you for hanging with me for the last 30 weeks. I really appreciate it. I love this work. I am obsessed. It's all I do all day, every day. That's because of you guys. You allow me to do that. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Thank you for all the testimony videos. Thank you for being here tonight. Have an amazing night. Go get some deep sleep. We will chat tomorrow if you're in the Facebook groups. I'll keep you posted on this crazy fast I'm doing. So 77 hours right now. We're going to see what I feel like tomorrow and the day after and the day after. Let's see. All right, guys. Thank you so much for everything. I love you. Bye, Clovis.